Thanks for joining us for another Unmuted. Today, we're going to focus on what's going on at the border. It's one of the things that you all write to us about so regularly. And you have so many concerns. We do too. And many times you have mentioned about the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, and what is happening to women and girls and children in that border. And the human trafficking has become a $13 billion business over the last very few years. It's grown from $500 million to $13 billion. And it's an explosive growth. And it's one of the reasons we continue to say, you have to secure that southern border. Well, today's guest who is with us, Rosi Orozco, and Rosi is a former Congresswoman for Mexico. They're in Mexico. And the issue that she worked on and still continues to work on is that of human trafficking. So Rosi, welcome to Unmuted. And I'd love for you to begin by talking about your service in Congress and how you became so interested in this issue.
Thank you, Senator Marcia. I was invited in 2005 to an event called the Bridge Project in Washington, D.C. Congresswoman for America made this incredible training for people who worked in NGOs. We already were helping youth people and doing an incredible job, my husband especially. So we were invited and trained 5 days about human trafficking. One day was awareness, and they show us a movie that is called Lila Forever. I cry all the time. 5 days that I was being trained, I cry and cry and cry. I couldn't believe that that was happening in my country. And I didn't know. I had to learn it coming to DC. And for me, broke my heart because I was very blessed. I come from a family that is a very blessed family with a lot of love. I studied here in the United States when I was 15 years near San Antonio, and I studied in France. And I was so blessed, and learning how much a little girl can suffer, it was too much for me. So that's how I was invited to do something. There was a call to action, and at the end of these 5 days, awareness, prevention, law enforcement, persecution of the law of the crime, and restoration of the victims. My husband and me, we choose to start to help victims.
And you have continued with this. As we were on the border working with my latest trip down there, you said you passed the only legislation that had become law in Mexico dealing with human trafficking, correct?
Yes, because when we started the first shelter, we couldn't take the traffickers, the pimps, to jails. So it was so hard for the victims. When I was invited in 2009 to run as candidate, I thought I was not going to win because it was impossible. It was really a miracle that I won, and I won for a large margin. But all my campaign was that I was going to do the human trafficking law. And I want to thank again all the friends that I made, 500 congressmen and women, and 128 senators, both unanimous for the law. So I have a lot of friends that I always thank them because they believe in this law and they voted unanimous.
And you left Congress, and now you are working to rescue these victims. And I had the opportunity to meet one of the victims, Carla Jacinta Romero, that you had visit with us. And I could not believe her story, how she was apprehended when she was 12 years old and was trafficked, sex trafficked, and raped hundreds of times and escaped when she was 16 years old. It was a remarkable story.
Yes, Rafael Romo has done an incredible documentary of her life. Well, if you Google Carla Jacinto with K, Carla Jacinto is so famous. One day we visit Dubai because she's an activist and she gives a lot of conferences all over the world. 3 times she has been with the Pope. And when I was in Dubai, the journalist said, "Oh, I know who you are," because her story is so famous. If you Google, you will find her everywhere. We have helped her for 14 years, and that's what hurts my heart so bad, because to restore the life of somebody who has been raped so many times a day, it's so difficult. We have helped her for so long, 14 years. Now she's an activist. Now she helps others, and I'm so proud of her. But it's very difficult, and it's a lot of money to restore the lives of these girls who are now being crossed to from our country to your country. It's so sad to what we saw in the border, Marcia. We saw so many little girls and boys, and I have these shoes to remember me. I have these shoes,
Yes.
I took them from the border because I have them near me, not to forget what we saw. You and me saw so many little shoes from girls and boys that are being crossed, and so many without their parents.
Well, you're exactly right about that. And it is just heartbreaking. And that's why this trip to the border, my colleagues and I really focused on the humanitarian aspect of this. You know, Rosi, I don't think that everyone appreciates the extent to which the cartel is in charge of the border. And no one comes over that border. Nobody can get over that border without first paying the cartel. When we stood on the banks of the Rio Grande, we saw the coyote, a member of the cartel, actually steering people across the river, leading them across where to step. And so we know what the cartel is doing, and we know these individuals are being mentally, physically, emotionally, sexually, and drug abused as they make that journey. So I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. Now, our audience can find you online on Twitter at Rosi, Rosi Orozco, Orozco. That is her name at Twitter. And you're always going to find me online at Marcia Blackburn. Rosi, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for what you do to rescue children and women and girls who are being trafficked and feel they have nowhere to turn. And thank you for continuing to work to find the 26,000 children in your country that are missing. We are grateful to you, and I appreciate you joining us today to tell your story.